This is a really popular video. I never got a chance to watch this before.
Hey guys, Hamsterwheel Gaming here, and I'm here to talk about what these so-called veteran WoW players are calling the hardest dungeon ever to be conceived by Blizzard. Old Naxxramas. Naxxramas has long been considered to be the hardest dungeon, and for a good reason. It wore on the whole guild, and while Blackwing Lair and Entourage were tough as hell, Naxxramas was unforgivable. Before I start explaining how hard it was and my personal experiences in Nax, allow me to share some numbers with you.
Okay, here we go.
Before the Burning Crusade, there were around 895,000 level 60 characters scattered across 179 US servers. There were only 900 guilds that managed to kill only one boss in Naxxramas, and take a guess at how many guilds actually cleared Naxxramas on US servers.
Wait.
Nope, you're wrong. 23. That's right. 23 guilds managed to clear the entire raid. That means that an average of around 1,000 players got to kill Kel'Thuzad.
That's fucking ridiculous.
Which is less than 0.1% of the entire US player base.
And people like that, I think. There are a lot of people that like that.
Percentage. That is a number that has never been achieved with any other dungeon in the history of WoW. Hell, no other dungeon even came close to that number. So why were there so few guilds and players that cleared the entirety of Naxxramas?
Because BC was coming out and nobody gave a fuck about the gear.
Needed to be able to step into Naxxramas, shall we?
Yeah.
First of all, the absolute minimum requirement in terms of gear was a majority of tier 2 or tier 2.5 gear, and nothing lower than items that were on par with tier 1. If you didn't have that kind of gear, it was back to farming Blackwing Lair or AQ40. So even before you were geared for Nax, you had to run Molten Core to get tier 1, and then Blackwing Lair and AQ4 to get your hands on the tier 2 and tier 2.5.
Progressing through raids.
And keep in mind that all these raids I just mentioned were 40-man raids, and every boss dropped an average of 3 epics. 4 or 5 you were lucky, but definitely 3 on average.
3 for 40 people.
Those 3 items on average had to be split over a 40-man raid group. And don't forget that not every raid had the exact same people. So there were a total of around 60 to 70 people in that guild.
That's why you had DKP.
That needed to be geared up in order to enter Naxxramas. Okay, so after months and months of farming Blackwing Lair, Onyxia, AQ40 and such, you finally had 40 people that were geared for Nax. Does that mean you're ready for this instance? Nope, of course not. Because not only did you need some of the best items in game to start raiding,
you had to get attuned.
You also needed a ton of consumables. That's right, the encounters in Nax 40 were actually so hard that the best possible gear you could get before Nax 40 was not good enough for Nax 40. If Blizzard did that now in Mist of Pandaria, there would be an outrage on the forums of people screaming in terror to buff the items, but in WoW Vanilla, that was it. You had the tier 2 and tier 2.5, and that was it. There was nothing better before Nax 40. Most guilds attempted Nax 40 on weekends, so during the weekdays,
I think tier 2
you were forced to farm consumables such as potions, food, flasks, and other stuff. And this is where one of the things that really wore on me as a healer. If you were a healer and you had to farm consumables, you were screwed,
bitch.
Because you did next to no damage to mobs. There was no spell power back then. Oh no, tier 2 and tier 1 only gave you bonus healing, which meant your offensive spells did no extra damage whatsoever. So farming was extremely slow and extremely painful. Not only that, there was no dual talent option where you could simply switch from Resto to Feral, and even if you could, you probably didn't even have the proper gear for that spec, because all the items that had agility and strength went to warriors and rogues who needed it for their main spec.
Of course.
Even if you somehow got your hands on some decent Feral gear, a respec cost a total of 60 gold every time. That's right, if you were to farm with your off spec, you basically had to spend 60 gold to switch to that spec, and another 60 gold to eventually switch to your raiding spec. That's a total of 120 gold, which was a lot of money back in those days. A lot of money.
I just want to pause and like add some context for this. So back in the day, 50 gold was worth something like, I would say the amount that, the amount that it was worth, add like 4 or 5 zeros. Or add 4 zeros to any number in vanilla, and that's the equivalent gold that it would be worth nowadays. Okay? So if it's 50 gold, add what, that 500, 5,000, 50,000? Yes, yeah, somewhere around there. Maybe even more than that. Honestly, in some cases, it would be even more than that. It's insane.
Alright, now we got 40 people who are geared and have a crap load of consumables. Are we ready to enter the instance now? Nope. The final step to actually getting into the instance was the attunement quest, which was a bitch on its own. First of all, you had to get honored with the Argent Dawn, which meant you had to either farm quests.
Yes, it was.
No, it wasn't, dude.
This shit was a pain in the ass.
What do you mean? It was easy.
Now imagine if you are, if you've just done Blackwing Lair, you got a bunch of tier 1, you got a bit of tier 2 gear, and all of a sudden you have to jump into level 60 blue 5-man dungeons just to get honored. That was extremely annoying because obviously you're not getting anything out of those dungeons apart from the
just farming
reputation.
the rep. It's not a big
the
deal.
items you get there are pretty useless unless for some kind of decent off-spec items. Maybe, but that was really frustrating. And after you get honored, you still had to throw down 5 arcane crystals, 1 righteous orb, and 2 nexus crystals. Those regions used to cost an approximate of at least 200 gold. If you were revered, it only cost 90 gold, and if you were exalted, the quest was completely free. But getting exalted was extremely time consuming, so you were
like
better off just
coughing
up the items to get your pass for next.
Maybe 40. I'm wrong, but I feel like even I was like revered.
Okay, so now we can finally enter the hardest instance in the entire game. So I guess that now it's time to talk about the difficulty of the actual bosses.
Here we go.
Now there might be people here watching this video saying, well, I've cleared Naxxramas Lich King and that was pretty hard. Well, maybe, but it was nothing compared to Naxxramas Vanilla.
Who said that?
Let me give you an example, such as the Locust Swarm of Anouk Rekan. The effect of Locust Swarm in Wrath caused a dot debuff that did around 1300 to 1700 nature damage every 2 seconds.
What about it?
And it silenced the target. The effect of Locust Swarm in Vanilla caused a dot debuff that did around 1200 damage every 2 seconds, and it silenced the target. That's right. Even though an average geared player in Wrath had at least 10 times more health, the damage of the debuff was almost exactly the same as in Vanilla.
Yeah.
Back then, a proper geared Clothy had about 3,500 health at best, which meant 3 ticks of that debuff and you were dead. 6 seconds and you were dead. You were done. Another boss that comes to mind is...
I want to pause that right there.
What?
The reason that they didn't change the numbers is Blizzard intended on players approaching the mechanic in a different way. At level 60, Blizzard intended for players to kite a Numrikon around the outside of the room, and at level 80, they expected players to have the tank use cooldowns and tank the damage. So that's why it wasn't changed, because the mechanic was intended to be dealt with in a different way.
Yeah, but Nax was still hard.
One second, guys. I want to. Can 2 people queue up and do these islands? Can I leech islands off of anybody just real quick? If I can just leech this stuff, if anybody wants to queue up and do islands while I'm AFK, that'd be great. But I mean, like, if not, that's okay too, because, like, I'm really not doing anything. I just figured I'd ask because, I mean, fuck it. You gotta take your chances.
Enough. Raids in Wrath could actually ignore the curse and didn't even bother to decurse. However, if there was no decursing going on in Nax Vanilla, it meant an instant wipe for the entire raid.
Yes.
That's how hard it was. Hell, even the 4 horsemen fight, you needed 8 geared tanks. 8! Not 1, not 2, not 1 main tank, 2 off tanks. No, 8 geared tanks.
Oh yeah, there's
That's
8
absolutely insane compared to today's standards. I remember in my guild we actually had to try and steal geared tanks from other guilds to help us out because A, we didn't have enough attuned tanks,
Everybody
and B,
did that.
they weren't all properly geared.
Everybody obviously did that.
That's how far we had to go to even stand a chance against an encounter that wasn't even one of the last bosses in Naxx 40.
It was fucking OP.
That's right, it was that freaking brutal. Naxx 40 had almost the exact same damage values as Naxx in Wrath Lich King, which makes Naxx in Wrath look hilariously easy.
It was.
Just for a comparison,
it was supposed to be easy.
Naxx in Wrath was fully cleared in less than a week after its launch.
That's true.
Let's take a look at Naxx in Vanilla.
That's including leveling too.
The patch for Naxxramas came out on the 19th of June 2006, and it wasn't until the 7th of September before Kel'Thuzad was finally killed. That's right.
That was
it
right
took
before
the entire player base almost 3 months before one guild actually managed to clear the entire instance. That is something that is just extreme if you compare that to other
3 fucking
instances.
months.
I mean, instances in Burning Crusade came kind
Jesus
of close,
Christ.
but this is a number that has been unmatched.
Wait, Stars was around
for
back
years.
then?
It was
Holy
2006.
Yeah,
It's
dude. Remember Death and
2014
Taxes?
right now.
Yeah, I don't
It's
remember
been
Stars
8
though.
years, and there hasn't been an instance that came even close
Wow.
to this number. That is absolutely insane.
That's pretty crazy.
Not only that, in order to actually survive insane damage like this, you needed resistance gear. Something that has become obsolete in today's
This was the
WoW.
fun part of the game.
I wouldn't even be surprised that people don't even know what resistance gear is for anymore. I wouldn't be surprised. But you actually need to get your hands on frost resistance, nature resistance, shadow resistance, and fire resistance gear in order to properly withstand all the damage in this instance. And resistance gear, especially for frost, was extremely scarce.
RPG elements. Ew.
There were a few frost items that dropped from bosses
Where's
in
my
that 40,
slot
but once again,
machine?
every single guy in that 40-man group needed to have that gear, so it could take another month before you actually had some frost resistance gear, which you absolutely needed for the fight against Sephiron. And it wasn't like you could just go to the auction house and buy a green level 55 of the frost resistance gear. No, that was not enough. You actually needed purpose-built frost resistance gear. Frost resistance gear with spell damage. Frost resistance gear with increased defense and a lot of stamina. And that took a long, long time. If your raid didn't have any frost resistance gear, you could not do Sephiron. If you couldn't do Sephiron, you couldn't move on to Kel'Thuzad. So basically, if your guild didn't have any frost resistance, you were stuck at Sephiron. That's
there were
it.
so many
that's the farthest
frost
you will
resist,
come.
8 tanks.
If your raid didn't have any shadow or nature resistance gear, it was an absolute bitch to get through the beginning parts of the Plague, Spider, and Abomination Wing, let alone Loathep. You needed resistance gear.
The dick sucker himself.
Alright, let's recap a bit before we move on. So let's just check out what aspects we have that make Naxx 40 really hard so far. So far we have the gear in terms of farming tier 1, then tier 2, and tier 2.5.
Yeah.
And then we have dealing with scarce loot while rolling against 39 other people in your raid.
That's the fun part.
We have consumables which cost a crap load of money or took ages to farm if you didn't have a DPS character. We have that freaking attunement quest, which also costed a crap load of money. The insane damage values, and finally the mandatory resistance gear. So now let's move on to trash.
Don't forget about that.
As I just stated above, you needed resistance gear to clear out trash in several wings. But not only that, some trash actually respawned after 30 minutes. That's right, you had 30 minutes to try and kill a boss until you were stuck at the start,
it's like 2 pulls.
having to kill all that trash over and over and over, which can really wear on you if you keep wiping on one boss.
That would fucking
not
suck.
making any progression whatsoever.
Oh
which
yeah,
brings me
it definitely
to
sucks.
something else I want to bring up: the drama. Naxx 40 was brutal and it wore out guilds one by one. It was basically farming consumables during the weekdays, which cost a lot of time, and then wiping over and over again during the weekends, only to get stuck on trash after 30 minutes and having to start all over again. It was only a matter of time before
coordination with
people
the
in guilds
thorns.
started getting frustrated and started pointing fingers, blaming other people, etc. Many vanilla
That's
players
right.
have said that Nax 40 was the guild breaker. And I quote, if you wanted to tear your guild apart, you should do Nax 40. I guess now is a good time to tell you about my personal experience
That's
in
about
Nax 40.
right.
I was in one of the top raiding guilds on the Frostmane server called Legio Excisio. We were one of the first guilds to kill Nefarian, and in AQ40 we got to Cthulhu before Nax 40 came out. We had a great time in Molten
pretty
Core, Blackman Lair, Onyxia, but when we started doing Nax 40 we watched our own guild crumple apart. We got sick and tired of spending hours and hours
This is like too
farming
much Sargeras,
consumables
man.
only to waste them on countless wipes, which meant fights in Vedrillo started happening, people not wanting to do Naxxramas anymore.
Imagine spending 3 hours, spending 160, 120 gold to respec over to DPS, to farm out consumables, spending the 60 gold to respec back to healer, using all of the consumables, going into Naxxramas, clearing all of the trash, pulling the boss, having one person fuck up, and losing all of that progress and having to re-kill the entire trash again. God, I cannot wait for vanilla. It's gonna be fucking great.
Oh no,
Or
Classic's
which
gonna
led
be
in-
dead in a month, dude.
True,
It's gonna be
dude.
over.
Nobody's gonna play
Nobody's
that game.
gonna. No, I mean, everybody will be burned through the content. It's gonna be done. It's over, dude.
Yeah.
Fucking more.
To us not getting any further. And that eventually led into our guild eventually breaking up. We managed to kill Instructor
Yeah, I
Resuvius,
bet.
and Brakan and Patchwork, but after that we pretty much reached a dead end. We were tired of wiping, viping, pointing fingers, we just gave up. We left the guild and we went our own way, and that was pretty much the end of our guild.
That's sad.
Despite all the great times we had in Blackman Lair and Molten Core and the fun,
Great times in
We-
Molten Core.
Nax 40 just destroyed our guild. I know it sounds dramatic, but it really happened that way.
That happened in
And,
TOS to
and
mine.
trust me, it happened for so many guilds. And so many people will tell the exact same story I'm telling now. It destroyed guilds because it wore on you so bad. It was, as I've said before, brutal.
It was a cock in
Not
the
only
ass.
that, imagine the lag and the horrible frame rate players had to deal with.
At 70,
Imagine
it was
trying
still
to
hard.
do a raid with 39 other people throwing around spells and killing tons of mobs. I mean,
How's
my
my thing
computer
for
back then
$6?
was considered to be a pretty decent gaming computer.
Appreciate that.
And even that thing struggled to get more than 25 frames per second. Compare that with WoW today, where even the most basic gaming PC will
12
have
FPS
no
is really
trouble
good.
running WoW at 60 frames per second on medium settings. It was... That just made it extra difficult, not being able to
12
respond
FPS
just
pog.
like that. You basically were just always half a second behind because your frame rate was terrible, and then there was the lag. Hell, some people actually disconnected from the server during fights, such as Thaddeus.
Oh,
I mean,
that
is
makes
just
it
insane.
fun.
It would be unacceptable in today's WoW, and it happened in vanilla in Nax 40. I've heard people say that Nax 40 can be hard because the mechanics are a lot easier than today's mechanics from
That's
bosses.
true.
And yes, you are absolutely right. I mean, the mechanics for Garrosh on Heroic are a lot more complicated and a lot more advanced
Heal me, I'm
compared
walking back
to
in.
bosses in WoW Vanilla. But keep in mind that back then we also didn't have nowhere near enough flexibility in terms of spells and longevity. Almost every single spell was mana expensive. I mean, you had healers going out of mana, tanks lacking rage and almost no AoE aggro abilities, and hunters also going out of mana.
That's very true.
Yeah, you heard me right.
They'd have to
Hunters had
feign
mana
death
back in
and drink.
those days, and needed to carry around mana potions if they were to last during a long fight.
Hunters with mana is way better than
Getting
Focus,
out of mana
by
True.
was
far.
no
I agree.
exception. It happened
I hate
every
Focus.
time, and especially in Naxxramas, you needed to have
Stupid.
consumables just to be able to survive, just to have enough mana, just to continue on healing or throwing frostbolts or whatever. You needed it. Well, I guess that's everything I can tell you about Nax 40 for now. I hope you realize how brutal this instance was back then, and I'm pretty sure there are a few more arguments to explain how to you know, convince people how hard Nax 40 was back in WoW Vanilla. Despite that, I still had some glorious times in Naxxramas, and I can't deny I feel somewhat proud to be part of that, you know, that handful of guilds who actually managed to kill some bosses in that godforsaken place. Yeah, that was just, yeah, lots of memories there, but not all of them were really great. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I want to know your experience in Nax 40, so if you want to share that, then leave a comment below this video. Okay, folks, that's
my experience in Nax 40 was I zoned in and I got too close to the abominations in the construct quarter, and they ran over and they killed me in one hit, and I legitimately felt fear, and I never logged back on. I never went in there again. Like, that was the first, that was the only time I ever did that. I was worried about that. Watch the follow-up video. Oh, right. Did he do it? Yeah, let me see if he did a follow-up video. I think that he did.
And not only did you have to farm the flasks, you had to farm the potions, you had to get the world buffs, all this stuff. You had to get the profession stuff. You also had to farm the Twitch Primes. You had to farm the Twitch Primes right now. Everybody in the chat, take a break, take a moment, and go ahead and Twitch Prime right now, if you don't mind. Just go ahead and click that button right above the stream and Twitch Prime. Thank you very much.
Okay, alright. Thank you, dude. Thank you. Oh, wait. Why would that work? Well, why? I don't understand why that would work. Just a sec. Alright. Nax? Where is it here? Review 2. I'm seeing if I can find this. Naxxramas trailer. Revisiting my old video. Was Nax really that hard? That's a 50-minute video. Like, I'm not going to watch that. Captain Ambulance, thank you very much for the 10 gifted subs. Holy shit. Thank you, dude. Thank you, everybody, for the Twitch Primes. McConnell, that one actually worked really fucking well. Holy shit, that one worked. Wow.
I know.
God damn, dude. Holy shit. Thank you so much, man. I appreciate that. Thank you. Wow. That's fucking insane. Thank you. Oh my god.